Well, just days after Prince Harry and Meghan shocked the country by announcing their intention to step back as senior royals, today the Queen is holding an emergency meeting.
Well, taking place at Sandringham in an hour's time and attended by Her Majesty, Princes Charles, William and Harry, the meeting is to finalise the Sussex's role moving forward.
Well, we're joined now by our royal correspondent, Camilla Tominey, alongside Dr Shola Mos-Shogbamimu, and she believes that the issues of race are at the heart of Harry and Meghan's decision. So good morning to both.
Morning, welcome.
Start with the summit then.
Yes.
Who called it? What's it for?
Well, the Queen's called it. In a way, it seems astonishing that they haven't had the face-to-face meeting before now, but to be fair, the Queen's in Norfolk, the Prince of Wales was in Scotland, he flew to Oman yesterday and has come back, so he's been up against it as well, and the Duke of Cambridge and Prince Harry are going to go up there and should be there now. We don't quite know about timing. We think they might have lunch first and then have the summit this afternoon and then top and tail it with tea. Very English.
Isn't it?
Very much in the Queen's vein, because she likes to take tea at 5, and then we may or may not have a resolution. Aides are saying it could take 5 minutes, could take 5 hours. And just to summarise it in kind of fairly simple speak, you know, what they're looking at really, and it's been nicknamed Megxit, hasn't it? A hard Mexit, so they go off to America, they cut all royal ties, they lose funding, they don't use their HRH titles, etc., and just move to North America permanently, or a so-called soft Mexit, which would see them trying to have a quasi-royal role. So on one hand, retaining some kind of enlarged Commonwealth role where they spend time in Canada and America, but also retain a connection to the royals as well as trying to be financially independent. And maybe the agreement that they strike is going to be something phased so that they lose funding over time as they transition to a new situation. But the latter scenario, while probably the most preferable all round, because I don't think anyone really wants to see them completely sever ties from the royal family, is the most complicated. It's unprecedented, and we haven't had this half in, half out.
Is Meghan taking part in this summit?
So we think she's going to be in the summit either on conference call, possibly even on FaceTime. There'd been some reports this morning about WhatsApp communications, but I think if she's going to dial in, conventionally speaking, it would be through the switchboard on a conference call.
And so what about William and Harry? Because there's been reports over the weekend where William has allegedly said that they are now separate entities, so this will be the boys together, actually talking face-to-face. What's this going to do to their relationship?
Well, I think over the weekend we've seen yet more reportage of the fact that things aren't great between them, and I think Tom Bradbury, who knows them both well, the ITV news anchor, gave an interview, or did a piece in the Sunday Times where he's saying this has been festering since the royal wedding and some awful things were said and done, and it's not really been resolved since then. So I suppose there's a hope not only to find a solution to this situation, which actually isn't just going to affect Harry and Meghan moving forward, but perhaps also future generations of royalty. They want a blueprint that can be used for the likes of Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, but equally perhaps there needs to be some, pardon the pun, but banging of heads together, looking at that initiative set up for mental health a couple of years ago, in order to try and get better relations between all of these royals. And perhaps the Queen is the only person, frankly, who can help to mediate this situation.
Well, Tom Bradbury over the weekend sort of hinted Harry and Meghan had been, you know, she'd been driven out of a poisonous palace.
Yes. I think there is this sense that they have had grievances for some time, which, although the palace has tried to address them, perhaps hasn't been quick enough to do so. Some of the reason for the rushing out of the statement last Wednesday was because Prince Harry had put together his own blueprint, because his father had said, we need this in writing, we need to see what you have intended. And he didn't want to commit it to paper because he was worried about leaks, which is worrying in itself. And there's been some counter-briefing about who might have leaked it, which shows the acrimony at the heart of the palace at the moment. But equally, this sense that his father delayed it, and he then went to his grandmother to try and force the issue. And he felt that it wasn't being given swift and urgent enough attention. So that's created a bit of a rift. But yeah, I would say that at the moment, you know, after the last week that we've seen, things haven't been great. And a lot of the reporting that we've seen over the last 2 years has borne fruit and now come out into the open a little more.
OK, so at the heart of this, Dr Shola, do you believe that racism is to play? I mean, this is a question that you feel, actually, you're exhausted of having to defend it, because for you, it's so blatant that, yes, the answer is yes, racism is to play.
You've taken the words right out of my mouth. It is exhausting when you keep hearing people either deny that racism is at the heart of this. People go, it's criticism, but it's criticism steeped in racism. And look, I think that the difficulty here for a lot of people is that they do not understand this thing. And the thing is that it is not the job of black people and ethnic minorities to educate white people on racism that is perpetuated by white people.
Right.
White folks need to go educate themselves on the racism they perpetuate. The reason why the racism experienced by Meghan feels so personal and it deeply resonates with a lot of people is because it's symptomatic of the culture of racism in the United Kingdom.
What examples do you have?
You see, that is another problem. When people keep asking what examples, it makes me question. It makes me question, where have you been the last 2 years? What have you been reading? What have you been? Listening to?
I've been reading some criticism.
Right.
I haven't personally read anything that I could say was based on racism.
And this is part of the problem. And let me explain what racism looks like from the lens of white privilege. White privilege whitewashes racist and inflammatory language as unconscious bias. It perpetuates the bigotry of intolerant white people as ignorant. It defends and protects their private views, once spoken, as misspeak, and then camouflages racist behavior as error of judgment, which is exemplified by Danny Baker's tweet when he compared Archie to a chimpanzee. Now, look, I think if you look at a lot of the criticisms she's faced, even a lot of the examples, it sums up to one thing. How dare she? She doesn't know her place. She's uppity, right? When a black woman, right, goes along with the flow, does what is expected of her, it's all okay. But the moment she exercises independent thought, independent authenticity, her own independent views, she's a problem.
So there is, I mean, we've sort of been looking through, and I know online there's lots of examples of how she's been treated differently compared to Kate. There's a few examples here. We'll just show a couple of them now. So you've got this, for example, the bouquet of flowers. So you've got Kate's bouquet there, Kate Middleton, homegrown bouquet of the Lily of the Valley follows the royal code. Meghan's wedding, how Meghan Markle's flowers may have put Princess Charlotte's life at risk. I mean, two identical bunches of flowers, two very different way of handling them. So is this what you're saying? Although people may not be aware, they might say, well, I'm not racist, I haven't written that in a racist way, but it's the subtext, it's the subconscious beneath it.
Which is why I'm hoping by giving that tip, the education on what white privilege does, when you see racist and inflammatory language or language that is steeped in racism, and then you call it something other than racism.
Can I ask you then, has she missed a huge opportunity here then? By being her, as a senior member of the royal family, to help break down some of that subconscious racism. She had an opportunity to be that role, to be that person in the biggest role that there possibly is. Do you not feel slightly let down?
Absolutely not. Meghan has done jack all wrong, if I can be perfectly blunt. When you say that she had an opportunity, she hasn't not met the opportunity. It's what she's faced. It's the volume of abuse, the vitriol of abuse steeped in racism, misogyny, sexism. So how much more is she expected to take? And bear in mind that if she had responded, say, as I would respond, she'll be stereotypically defined as the angry black woman. I mean, when you look at the kind of comments that have been used to describe her, straight out of Compton. She's not from Compton.
No.
All the kinds of words that have been used to describe her. As I said, she's uppity. People complain that she shrouded her son's christening, secrecy. You compared, not you, but the press, compared her son to a chimpanzee. You're lucky she even told you about
We've got a press representative.
Well, when I say press,
hang on,
Camilla, you have
the Danny Baker tweet, I think we can all agree, was completely inappropriate, and he was rightly reprimanded.
It was racist.
The straight out of Compton
he lost
was
his
racist.
job for it.
I said
he got hired.
Hang on a minute.
Right,
Let's just let, because specific examples are quite useful here. When the straight out of Compton narrative started, after I broke the story of their relationship back in October of 2016, I wrote and called out that that was inappropriate language to use. Has there been anti-Americanism towards Meghan? Yes. Has there been misogynism towards Meghan? Yes, because we are seeing her take too much of the blame for what is undoubtedly a joint decision.
That's right.
Prince Harry's own view preempted this because he wasn't particularly happy with the idea of having to play second fiddle to his brother and indeed to have to run a lot of his own charitable work by Kensington Palace. He didn't want to be locked in with the Cambridges. He wanted to go his own way, and he's constantly been worried about being sidelined sidelined and overshadowed because he understands his own branding. But when we come to the actual specifics of how Meghan has been treated by the palace, which is, people might not believe, but a more multicultural and diverse environment, the royal household, than you might imagine. There are quite a lot of people of colour working in the royal household. There are quite a lot of people of a different sexual persuasion working in the royal household.
So that hasn't changed anything. They're working, which is different from Meghan,
but you're talking
who has entered the royal family as a member of the family.
And chosen to leave.
I know, but you're talking a lot about white privilege.
She hasn't left. I mean,
you're talking a lot about white privilege, and I'm saying that there are... you can't just paint the palace as this place which is just full of white men in grey suits.
No, but it's not the palace. I'm talking about the culture of racism.
Yeah,
That's why we need to have the conversation.
Which is huge.
In the UK.
It's a huge conversation.
But also
I just want
there's
to get
criticism...
to the bottom of the papers.
But the bottom
Do you
of the
think
papers...
there is a racist element within the media in Britain?
Yes.
I think there's a... I don't think there's a racist element that's overt, but I think that she has been treated as an outsider largely because of her Americanism, the fact that she's a divorcee and the fact that she had a career before. And I think there's been mistrust of somebody new coming in. But equally, if we look at the criticism of Prince Harry, which has been equally vociferous, I know that on one hand we're trying to push Meghan out of this and sort of say, well, she's been uniquely vilified. He has had a great deal of criticism and condemnation, which I suppose we can all agree wasn't racist in its tone.
But this is the challenge that I have. Anytime we have to talk about racism and the real issue of racism and the impact and consequence of it, we keep pushing it away and calling it something else.
Yeah.
It is racism. Let's call it what it is, which is why I explained what I said. The inflammatory language. Oh, no, but that's not racist. It's unconscious bias. The fact that people are bigoted in certain ways and they exhibit it in certain ways. Oh, I'm sorry, but that was just misspeak. That was just error of judgment.
Harry himself used the phrase.
Harry
himself used the phrase unconscious bias. Are you not happy with that phrase?
It's not about what... I use unconscious bias because I say that there's nothing unconscious about bias. The point is that there is a real issue of racism in this country.
We have to leave it there.
Is symptomatic of it.
We'll look
Really
forward to...
interesting. Thank you. It really is.
Thank you, both of you.
Very
we'll look
valid
forward
point.
to...